Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we're going to have a discussion of some sort, somewhat technical, somewhat a little history behind it, and then somewhat rumor based, if you get what I mean, because I have no way of confirming one of the major things that, we'll talk about in this video, and which is about the size of the dark zone pretty much. So the developers, were heavily criticized by the Division community for making 3 different dark zones in the game, and thereby making the dark zone small, or the dark zones small, and pretty much not giving a lot of opportunity for encounters that the Division 1 enjoyed. Those long encounters where you could run around the map, you had all kinds of different places that, provided a little bit more variety for having encounters, and you could move and change, just different things. And then, adding turrets at the gates, all of the above, all the things that, have been levied against the particular nature of the Division 2's dark zone is that it doesn't have that size. Well, I would say stems from the fact that it doesn't have the size that the first dark zone had. Now, it came to light over a lot of discussions I've been having that the reason the 3 dark zones were actually put there and the developers were not being transparent was that somehow the game or the way they designed the game, it could not handle a huge dark zone like the Division 1 did have. And I thought, that's actually interesting. Now, what is the difference between the Division 1 and Division 2 that made them decide to choose, the dark zone structure to be a 3, sectioned area rather than just making it one big dark zone? What was very different? Why would the game, not have been, technically sound to run that way on the consoles that already ran the very first game and even the PCs? Now, I started thinking about this, and I think it makes a whole lot of sense right now. Now, when it comes to the transparency side, well, that's their problem for probably not discussing the technical side of things with their community up front. I think they really did make a mistake because they've already always come out with the community to be more open than many other developers. And so I think they could have just easily said, we wanted to make the dark zone a bigger dark zone, but because of technical constraints, we weren't able to do it. I think that would have really, resonated more with the community than the community coming to find out like, oh, so this is why you didn't want to, make the dark zone the way it is. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you give us another bogus story in the first place? But when you lay that aside, you have to kind of come to terms with the fact that the Division 2 is a much more bulky game than the Division 1. And I think all of that emphasis from a technical standpoint of adding all of the elements to the game in terms of the way the open world works, the map, the activities in the open world, the way the missions are placed, the way the missions are not just placed, but the way they are transformed by different characteristics or by different circumstances. And what I mean by that is you think about one mission, that mission could be played in 3 different ways. Think about it. Like the Division 2 right now, you could play, say, District Union. You could play on Invaded. You could play it on Regular with all the difficulty modifiers. And you could play it in Legendary. All of that is all subject to all kinds of different changes that go with your map, depending on where you are, depending on the world tier. And then with control points, those are also different things that the map also, used to make changes to. Before, we couldn't reset the control points. If you knocked out all your control points, you had to wait for them to automatically reset. It wasn't until later on they added the functionality to be able to do so. So when you look at everything that's going on the map, I think it lends credence to the fact that if you want to run a game like that and run a big old dark zone in the middle, you're going to be loading so many contingencies. It's insane. And this is from a technical game design standpoint. I don't think the Division would have run on the PlayStation if they had done the Division 2 anyways, would have run on the PlayStation if they had done a big dark zone. Can you imagine how much stress this game put the PlayStation community through because it ran so poorly on the PlayStation? Imagine if they had slotted a whole big dark zone, one continuous area that you have player-to-player interaction, that you have all of those things together. Say if one of your agents is on the other end, say like Division 1, DZ6, and you're all the way in DZ9, and then you guys have to run across the map to meet each other. You have to also deal with all of the replication and contingencies. It would have been a huge, phenomenally busted game on release on the console. I don't even know if the Xbox would have been able to run it at that point. Now, PC may have been able to have some more chance, but you would have to run a high-end PC to be able to deal with that, in my opinion. So at the end of the day, how can things like these be resolved? How can the developers learn from something that really cost them a lot of trust? Something that I felt was very trivial. If you had a community manager that really did know how to speak to the community, they would have easily just said that. They would have easily presented it in a way that did not, in a sense, and I know this would have been a hard thing to to communicate. Maybe something that did not jeopardize a relationship with Sony or the console manufacturers, because I know that's something that's very sensitive for developers to talk about. It's hard for you to see a developer, in many cases, trash a console. In fact, one of our developers here actually did say something to the effect of Outriders, when people were saying, the way Outriders loading was and the way things were. And he said, think about the Division running on 2013 laptop specs. That's pretty much what the PlayStation and Xbox One were. They were laptop specs from the year 2013. They weren't really advanced pieces of hardware. Microsoft was diligent enough to refresh its hardware, but Sony didn't really do much, in my estimation anyways. I have a PS4 Pro and I have a PS5, fortunately, and I can tell you that the PS5 was, a big advancement, but even still, the hardware, compared to a PC, is still not necessarily, in my opinion, there. Now, if they wanted to really make the hardware to be, I would say pristine, the consoles would have been, hitting the $700 mark, and they would have shut out a lot of people from even trying to dream of purchasing it at that point. So all of these constraints and all of the ambitions of developers, I think what we had was a collision rather than a convergence with the Division, that it really, cost the development team a lot of what I would say goodwill with their community. But again, it was on them and their own responsibility to communicate this with their audience. And I think that's one thing that they're probably going to try to do more of as things come to light. So this is a learning experience for them. With Heartland coming down the road, I don't know how that game is going to be developed. I don't know what the map is going to look like in terms of its activity and in terms of its nature. If it's going to be, like the Division 2's map or something like the Division 1's map, or something like Survival's map, which is already kind of, in a sense, static or, built in a specific kind of way. But we'll get to see what that all looks like. But I'm hoping that the development team at Red Storm will realize that the value that Massive missed out on was in not communicating extensively with their audience, and they can probably take note and not make the same mistake again. Thank you very much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that the developers didn't make the Dark Zones because of that technical aspect of things? Or do you think it was just a matter of them just making that design decision and then it all basically failed, and then they just, chalked it up to, the game couldn't handle it and that was just an excuse? Let me hear your thoughts nonetheless. Peace out.